a come to the stable review of The Two Jakes, which is the Jack Nicholson movie that he directed also from 1990. Because we had this whole thing, we reviewed, or we did a deep dive of a movie written by Robert Towne last week, a masterpiece called Mission Impossible 2. And we also had an encounter with a homeless man in Seattle that mentioned Chinatown. So we decided The Two Jakes had to be our come to the stable review for this week.
It's true. It's true. Okay. Well, Todd, you picked it. You started. Tell us about The Two Jakes.
Okay. The Two Jakes, one of the Jakes, Jake Giddy's still Jack Nicholson. He's still a PI, and he gets hired by the other Jake, Jake Berman, played by Harvey Keitel, to do a job. And I don't know if Jack and Harvey ever worked together again, but they should have if they didn't, because they're pretty awesome together. But Jake is supposed to investigate the other Jake's own killing of his wife's lover for the purpose of like getting a potential murder charge reduced or something, I guess. I'm not really sure how that was supposed to work, but Kitty is the wife played by Meg Tilly. There's a mob element in there as well. Madeline Stowe plays the deceased widow, and then Eli Wallach is in this, Richard Farnsworth, Frederick Forrest, pretty cool cast. It has a strange tone. Initially, it's almost like a Coen-esque tone, and it's definitely trying to not create necessarily the magic of the original, which I think might be Nicholson's best performance. But it feels more like a 90s psycho thriller, but with the film noir narration that you get in Chinatown. And I'm not going to say Jack's phoning it in here, but he definitely isn't trying that hard. He loses something, I think, when he's directing himself. It gets pretty twisty, which is fun, but it's a patient movie. It's pretty long, so you have to really be in it and wait for it to get to that point. It's kind of the perfect movie for right now, though, because it's a legacy sequel, and it's unclear why it has to be a Chinatown movie and not just like a generic Private Eye movie until they make it obvious that about why, and it does what kind of amounts to almost fan service, if there is fan service for this type of material. It's not bad, but it's like kind of like all we get now. And I like how slimy all of the characters are. They're all like untrustworthy assholes. But in the end, it's a little too low key to really recommend. I could see why it's forgotten. I wouldn't have guessed that this movie would have been an absolute bomb, though, but it was. It just kind of ends with a thud. I have it at 2.5 stars. I'm not really sure this entirely works for Come to the Stable territory, but I'm curious what you guys think of it.
All right. Zach, where are you at?
Okay, so I have some questions about this movie. And you guys can chime in anytime you want. Okay, first question. The premise of this movie surrounds a recording that everybody's trying to get their hands on. I'm curious why they're trying to get their hands on this recording and what the recording proves. Now, according to Wikipedia, the question of the movie is whether the Harvey Keitel character is guilty of premeditated murder of his business partner who was also fucking his wife, or whether it was a crime of passion. I don't think the tape concludes definitively or not whether either was the case, and I don't really think it matters. This is not a case of Minority Report, red ball versus blue ball. Like, what is the difference? I don't understand why that is such a huge plot point in the story. Can you guys?
I think it's just simply it's a huge piece of evidence that there's an audio recording of the events that take place, but Jake is unwilling to give it up because of who it implicates and who it brings up when that person should be kept out of this whole mess.
But that's not the reason. No one knows that because no one has heard the recording. How would anyone make that assumption about why he's keeping it in his possession?
Well, I think, yeah, it does get a little muddled in there. I think the idea is, though, I mean, there's those that are trying to cover it up, so they want to destroy the tape. There are those that are trying to get the truth out, but they want to exploit it.
This is a film noir where there's never any doubt who the murderer is. That's actually one of the nice, I guess, relieving things about the movie. It's not a whodunit. It's not even really a why done it. It's a what the fuck done it. Anyway, okay, next scene. No, next question, excuse me. So the guy who has the evidence about the oil or the natural gas lean beneath the house. I mean, why is he going to beneath the housing unit? You know, why is he going to Jake Geddes about it? They go to a gay bar. Interesting scene. I don't. The purpose of that scene absolutely eluded me. I don't get it. Why doesn't he? Is there? What's he trying to say? There's natural gas. Okay, great. He needs to go to Jake Geddes about it. I'm not sure. Why didn't he just go to Harvey Keitel, who's actually the owner, the other Jake, of the housing unit? Did you guys understand that scene at all? Because I didn't.
Yeah, no, probably not.
Thing?
There's
Okay, next one.
there's so
these are a
much
little bit
there's so
more
much going on in
general.
this movie that it's hard to keep track of it all, for sure.
Jack Nicholson is supposed to be a war veteran. Jake Geddes went to World War II. Why does it look like he gained 70 pounds? This is not Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. They didn't make military suits in size XXXL, apparently.
It's 15 years later.
It's not 15 years later. It's supposed to be 11 years later. And he looks quite a bit older. It's just, he's totally wrong.
How long was this supposed to be after Chinatown?
Well, Chinatown takes place in 37. This takes place in 48. It's supposed to be 11 years after the events of Chinatown. It looks like it's quite a bit longer than that on the basis of Jack Nicholson's waistline. Next question. Who is the villain of this movie? Did you guys ever figure that out? Now, in the first movie, it takes a little while, but we get to a point where we determine definitively, oh yeah, it's John Huston. He's the asshole in this movie. He's the impetus behind all this shit that's gone wrong. Who's really the villain here? Is it supposed to be Richard Farnsworth? Oh, my little development there.
That's why I said I like that. I like that they're all just untrustworthy assholes. Like, you don't really know who the villain or even like.
But that's a problem. That's a problem with this movie, Todd. Who is the behind all this scheming? Is it the guy? It's. I don't think it's supposed to be Harvey Keitel. I think we're supposed to feel bad for Harvey Keitel by the end of the movie. His act is an act of unselfishness because he has terminal cancer. He's a Walter White situation. He won. By the way, the last scene of the movie, does he realize that there's gas beneath the reserve? I think so, because I think that's why he kills himself. I'm sorry, spoiler alert. I think he kills himself. I'm not entirely sure about that either. But I think the point is to make his wife have added value to that property. That was another question I have, but I will skip that one. The final question, which I think is the dumbest aspect of this entire movie. I think this movie is totally setting up that just like She's My Sister, She's My Mother in the first Chinatown movie, which, by the way, whenever we showed that to undergraduates at the university, they always laughed at that scene. It's never left my mind. It's why I can't really appreciate the first Chinatown, is because when anyone under the age of 30 watches that scene, they laugh at it, and I can't entirely disagree with them. Anyway,
this you did movie, when you watched it for the first time.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of a ridiculous scene, but anyway, I'll also be clear too. I'm not a huge Chinatown fan. I'll get to that a little bit later, but this movie has a similar type reveal when a character from the first movie shows up as a character in this movie that was supposed to be a character the whole time. How does Jack not recognize her? Oh, because she's wearing some makeup, or because her hair's a little different, or because she's wearing sunglasses. Give me a break. That is a lame device. This movie is fascinating because it is such a train wreck. The plot makes no sense. I first came across this movie in Nathan Rabin's nice blog that he turned into a book called My Year of Flops. He talks a little bit about this movie, calls it an absolute disaster. This was a movie or book I read last week by Sam Wasson, all about the making of Chinatown. And he has those last chapters all about the making of The Two Jakes, which was a 6-year-long project. It actually led to the complete disintegration of the friendship between Robert Evans, the kid stays in the picture, head of Paramount, and Robert Towne, everyone's favorite Mission Impossible screenwriter, and Jack Nicholson. They were not on speaking terms after making this movie. Robert Evans was in need of a big hit. He had a lot of cocaine issues. Robert Evans not making any hits either. No one saw Personal Best, even though it's a good movie. And Nicholson wanted to resurrect his early 70s persona, maybe because he was old, like Terry on this podcast, and he wanted to make another appearance as Jake Geddes. It just didn't work. The movie doesn't work. It's a total mess. Reading this book, it makes you feel sad. Nicholson was desperately trying to rewrite the screenplay. It was absolutely incoherent. They went on to set not knowing any aspect of it. Vilma Zsigmond did not speak English very well. The sets in this movie don't look good. The cinematography. Jack's wardrobe is awful in this movie. The Lakers had a particularly disappointing 1989 season. One wonders if he was courtside for a lot of those games. Here's the thing, though. I'm at 2 stars because I don't think this movie is dramatically worse than Chinatown, and I don't think it's dramatically worse than a lot of film noir movies. It's bad. It's not a good movie, but it's not like dramatically worse, and it's kind of entertaining in its incoherence. So much, I guess, like The Big Sleep. I grew up on The Naked Gun. I grew up on The Long Goodbye, which is my favorite noir. You know, that is a movie that is eccentric and weird. I like Inherent Vice. When you do a standard noir, it just, I don't buy it. I've never bought it. And this movie is a pretty standard noir with a ridiculous plot. So I got 2 stars. Long story short, I've rambled for a while now. I'm surprised my voice is still intact. It was a chore getting through this movie.
So I'm higher on it than you guys are. I'm going to give it 3 stars. I was entertained by it. You're right. The plot doesn't always make sense, but I don't know. I think Jack shows some talent behind the camera in this. He shows that he knows what it takes to make a noir. Has he directed anything else?
So this is his last movie. He only directed 3 movies.
this.
He directed
he
Drive,
directed
he
before
said,
this.
and Going South. He was not particularly noted as a director.
Okay. Interesting. I was looking at Robert Towne, who died almost a year ago. He died like July 1st, 2024. His last screenplay was in 2006, Ask the Dust, which he also directed. Then Mission Impossible 2.
Farrell movie.
Yeah. Then Mission Impossible 2. Then Without Limits, he directed and wrote the Prefontaine movie with Billy Crudup. Then he wrote Mission Impossible. Then Love Affair with Warren Beatty and Annette Bening. Then The Firm. Then The Two Jakes. Like this was nearing the end of his run for sure. He also wrote 8 Million Ways to Die, by the way, just to throw that out there. Another Come to the Stable. It's not the first time we've done a Come to the Stable of Robert Towne. The most distracting thing about this movie is how much older Jack Nicholson is from the first one. I love Chinatown. I love the first one. I think it's in my top 100 somewhere. But how much older he is, I feel like half the time when I was looking at him, you could tell that this was like a year after he had played the Joker. Because he looked like he was the gangster half the time. It's like, you are my number one guy. That's who we're watching this whole time. And so to try and see that, like, Jack is a guy who physically changed so much. Like, it was like watching Pacino come back and be Corleone in part 3. It's like, that's not the Pacino that played Corleone before. That's the Pacino that yells, "Hoo-ah!" Right? It's Jack, Pacino. They change so much physically throughout their career, even though it's not necessarily that much time, that it's hard to picture that this is the same character, even though it's being played by the same guy. That was the most distracting part of the movie. The twist at the end of who the person is, I figured that out like as soon as they showed her. But even with all that, I mean, this is a fun movie. I like noir. I like how much he like tried to dig into and make it a noir. I thought it was interesting, since they're in California, make earthquakes a character in the movie. I thought that was kind of neat and cool. I don't know. It was fun. I was enjoying it. And I didn't know. I figured there was controversy around this movie. That's why it was an fairly unknown sequel to Chinatown. But yeah, I would have preferred it to just be another like Jake Geddes mystery and not try to tie it into Chinatown. I thought that kind of took away from it too. Make it like Glass Onion was to Knives Out. Just make it another mystery solved by Private Eye Jake Geddes. But
it didn't even need to do that, though. I feel like it could have just been a 90s psycho thriller. You didn't even need to make it a noir. Like the story fits pretty well with like Michael Douglas movies of the time. But
Yeah.
they decided they want to make a Chinatown movie, so they had to make it something like that, I guess.
But I like trying to make the neo-noir. I was watching them like they think they're making like this was LA Confidential watched the Two Jakes and said we need to make sure we correct the mistakes that
Yeah,
they
there's a
made.
market there. We just need to figure out how to do it.
Exactly. But no,
Jack, I don't think is a great director because he screws up his own performance. I feel like by directing, but I don't think. I mean, the movie's not boring. It's just long, and it does take a long time to get to what makes it interesting.
Well, it's an interesting movie to read about because originally it was supposed to come out in the 80s. In fact, there was going to be a third movie about Jake Geddes that was going to conclude the trilogy called Geddes versus...
Jakes?
No, it was actually called Geddes versus Geddes, which took place in 1968. And, in this movie, he has a fiance. And in the Geddes versus Geddes, he was going to be divorcing his wife. And maybe she was played by Meryl Streep. I don't know. But that never happened. Like the movie, it's tragic to read about. So on the one hand, I kind of want to be like, when the critics lambasted Robert Altman for making Kansas City. I mean, that hit the old man deep. Okay. I feel a little bad lambasting this movie because by this point, Evans was coked out and irrelevant and Town couldn't make a hit anymore. And Jack was kind of a sellout by this point. I mean, Batman, then The Witches of Eastwick and Heartburn. I mean, this was not exactly the pinnacle of his career. And I think he saw himself a little bit as a Clint Eastwood type. Clint Eastwood 2 years later does not make a movie that much different than The Two Jakes and wins Best Picture for it and director. So it's unfortunate that the movie went in this trajectory. The problem is the Town script in this movie is incoherent, absolutely incoherent. And when William Faulkner, there's those great stories about John Huston, William Faulkner on the set of The Big Sleep, making shit up the day of filming. I mean, that might have worked in the 40s. It didn't work in 1990. It didn't work in an era of Who Framed Roger Rabbit or Dick Tracy. And it didn't, and The Naked Gun, which was already lampooning this style. And you got to remember, I actually pulled this one out too. Texasville also came out in 1990. This was the sequel, the long-awaited sequel to The Last Picture Show, which similarly bombed at the box office. And you guys got to remember that in 1990, very few people saw video cassettes. Very few people saw Chinatown. You need to have seen Chinatown pretty recently to understand this movie. There are huge components in this movie that if you don't remember the original are not going to make any sense, let alone a screenplay that even with that is still pretty incoherent and wacky. So it's a disaster, but I feel bad for them a little bit. And it's not a fun movie to necessarily bully up on. It's just too long and meandering and irrelevant, but it's not necessarily a bomb on the level of like, I don't know, The Bubble. I mean, it was kind of interesting to watch. It was too long and incoherent. It was more like what it could have been than what it actually was. Interestingly, Siskel and Ebert loved this movie. They both Ebert gave it 3.5 stars. He said it was perfect from one scene to another. It got good reviews. It has like a 63 on Rotten Tomatoes. And Paramount just came out with their 4K of Chinatown, and the Two Jakes is actually on that release, and so maybe people will rediscover it. Like I said, I don't think it's that much of a step down from Chinatown. What makes Chinatown such a great movie is that it took a genre that people had kind of lampooned and forgotten about and made it fun and serious and interesting. This movie, man, some of the voiceover in this is pretty bad. The staging is bad. The mise en scène is bad. Very few elements of this movie, actually. How about the ridiculous sex scene? Madeline Stowe, stick up your ass? I mean, come on. I don't know how you could watch that scene and not laugh at it. The Nicholson seduces multiple women in this movie. Are you kidding me? That was an unbelievable element of the movie that might have worked in 1984, but did not work at all in 1990. Laughably bad.
I like how one of the lawyers in this is played by Tracy Walter, who is also Bob the Goon in Batman the year before. I noticed that.
It's a great poll.
It is a great poll. All right. Well, I watched this on Canopy.
Yeah,
I
I
think
did
it's
too.
also on Paramount Plus right now, so
It looks
it's
good on
fairly
Canopy.
easy to find.
The,
Yeah,
the transfer looks nice,
it did look good.
but
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the like, to me, what made the Chinatown so great, that's a directed movie. I mean, Polanski had a great vision. That was the other reason that this movie wasn't made in the 80s, was of course the legal troubles that Polanski was going through. But like, this movie probably needed a better director. It probably needed like a Barry Levinson or something, or I don't know, maybe I don't know. Name a director, maybe a Scorsese or someone. It needed someone with better directorial vision.
But see, I like that they made it a noir. I think it works as a noir, but I could see saying it needed a little more of an established person behind the camera. That's fair. All right. Well, that's the Two Jakes. I gave it 3. Todd gave it 2.5.
Yep, 2.5.
And Zach gave it 2.
This has been on our Come to the Stable for many years. I'm glad we can finally knock it off.